Hi, and welcome to the Grand Strategy Consulting update for April. After everything that happened in March, we thought it was important just to consolidate some of those insights to help you to start thinking about what you can do in order to get future ready and human proof yourself for this future that isn't a sci-fi movie anymore. It's our lived reality. In March, the amount of change that happened is most probably similar to the amount of change that's happened over the last 10 years in 1 month. It's just mind blowing. And to keep up with it is kind of impossible, but also emotionally dysregulating. Luckily for you, we have had our heads out of the sand and firmly been focused on learning these tools, understanding what's happening in our world around us with AI. And so within the last 12 months, we've essentially had what feels like almost a decade's worth of learning around artificial intelligence. What we've really centered this around, based on our experience, is the need for us to teach people about emotional intelligence and increase emotional literacy in order to navigate this world internally and externally. So today we're going to talk about the fact that AI is a survival issue, not just a tech issue. And what do we need to understand to make better decisions to manage this future that's coming at us and create a more sustainable future for ourselves and our future generations? So the pace of change, as I've said, is no longer polite. Just Google like the things that happened in March, do an internet search, look on your social media. There was examples of people using their values and their virtues to make decisions around how they're going to engage with AI. And there were people who were demonstrating their focus on um, economics and money and generating revenue above and beyond the impact on individuals as their priority. So, whichever side of the table you're on, you need to be at the table in some shape or form to be able to not be, as somebody in our recent learning group said, served on the plate. So, what kind of future are you building? What kind of future do you support? And recognizing that not everything that is profitable is wise, and not everything that accelerates is progress, and not everything that scales serves life. This was a great example with the farmers in Kentucky when they made a decision not to take $26 million, which would be life-changing, to sell their land to build a data center. They decided they wanted to use their land to feed America and to provide real food for today's generation, but also future generations. Would you have made that same decision? Would you have said no to the $26 million? Where we're seeing money going is into AI, continuing to go into AI, even though there isn't necessarily any evidence that it's increasing GDP. So capital is financing the future while ordinary people like you and me are figuring out what we're going to do in the present when we're seeing that jobs are being affected, that people's communication habits, creativity is being affected, a whole bunch of things are being affected. And at the same time, we are part of the process of building this AI future by giving our intellect and our knowledge and feeding it into the machine, who are extracting our processes and turning that into repeatable labor and then turning that into software. So there's opportunities as entrepreneurs to be able to benefit from this by building services, which is just the way the world has worked. But at what point do we stop? At what point do we decide that we are not going to be programming the machine unless there is a balance in terms of how the money that's generated from that is redistributed to support some of the challenges we face in society? So, 8 dimensions of displacements we're seeing, and those are economic, educational, cultural, civic, ecological, financial, behavioral, and emotional. And I'll just pause there so you can read the narrative related to each of those for yourself. Where are you seeing currently the most impact for you in terms of displacement? What we recognize that a lot of the time, the displacement starts from a place of emotions. The erosion of the first rung of this ladder is a dignity issue. So now we have a broken mechanism in terms of how life used to work. Like there are no entry level doors opening widely to graduates coming out of university. That work is becoming automated. I've experienced children of friends who've reached out based on the fact that their first entry level job, they got replaced by automated processes. And so this job is this window or these doors are becoming more narrow. And what's the consequences of that? If we're not teaching new skills and we're not teaching the next generation that they can't ignore AI, they've got to understand it and then make a decision about how they navigate it. There's a whole generation that's at risk of being locked out before they've even started their lives. And so what does this do? It causes an emotional reaction. It creates anger, dependency, fragility, and distrust. And that breaks down all of our social and community structures when we have those uncomfortable emotions and no place for them to go. So the emotional truth beneath the hype is real. I mean, it's like just take a pause and just think about this. So if you can feel the ground moving underneath you, then you start to feel powerless because like it feels like something that's beyond your control. But if you delay dealing with it, the cost of delay increases the impact and actually increases your feeling of powerlessness. You start to use unhelpful coping mechanisms, which essentially numb you rather than building your capabilities and increasing your capacity to deal with what's happening. So just look at this framework and think about it in terms of your own life. What's happening? So we've got this trigger in terms of uncertainty, this shifting ground. Um, there isn't an emotional framework you have to like deal with this. It's all new, this kind of change and your expectation to adapt has become, it's just on a massive scale. It's overwhelming. So what do? You deny it's happening, you put your head in the sand, you act like an ostrich, or you find a way to distract yourself from doom scrolling, getting your dopamine hits, your oxytocin from the technology, which has been designed in order to do that and has been increasing its addictiveness based on societal events like the pandemic, which had us all locked in, which acclimatized us to virtual working and binge watching. You then criticize the technology because you're scared of it, and you have rights to criticize it because it's problematic. But criticism without knowledge then becomes ignorance. And so you freeze, you do nothing, and you focus on all of these distractions rather than developing the muscle of discipline in order to navigate it. That's the emotional truth. The rest is hype, like people talking about data centers. These things are real, but we got to focus on managing the regulation of our nervous system first so we can have real, meaningful, emotionally intelligent conversations about it. So how does this play out? So this is the quiet danger of becoming slowly irrelevant. Like your skills lag, you don't take action, you avoid the emotions related to feeling uncomfortable and the fear, and then you become outdated. And as we've seen what happened in March, in 1 month, in 31 days, just think of what's going to happen in the next 12 months. So the choice really is about thinking about what does intentional action look like for you? How do you get fluent in AI, in the domain expertise you have or the domain expertise that you want to build? What leverage do you have, not just individually, but as a community with the people around you? And then what are the entrepreneurial possibilities that are presented to you with this new technology? So let's not quietly go into a place of being completely unprepared. Let's find a way to build these learning circles and communities that support us to build the skills in safe spaces that are compassionate and empathetic to our different learning styles and our ways of learning, and master the art of grace in terms of the fact that people may get things wrong and people may communicate in ways that we don't understand or that are different to us, in order to increase our capacity to learn and then be able to guide our parents and also our children. So that gap that we talked about earlier, in terms of the state, the lack of emotional framework, we believe it can be filled with emotional intelligence as a hard survival skill. And so we've codified that into something that we call emotional maths, which teaches people to treat emotions as data, not as good or bad, not as things to judge people about because they have a visceral or physiological reaction to it, but to really understand what that is and make compassionate and empathetic decisions about how we manage that going forward, in order to not just sustain relationships, but sustain the possibility of us creating innovative solutions. So people who can't regulate will always struggle to learn and adapt and also earn. So becoming dependent on systems you do not control will create an even bigger sense of powerlessness. So how do we navigate that? We believe we don't have an information problem. There's information everywhere. There's free learning everywhere. We have emotional regulation problem. And without psychological safety, most adults will risk the ability to able to learn the new skills they need to learn. And it means that you won't develop the resilience to navigate this new world, and you'll become paralyzed. So how do you think we can solve for that? We believe we can create what we call the phenomenal future circle, which is driven by the model that we've been developing over the last year to support adults to learn AI skills and emotional intelligence skills. And so this is a future readiness ecosystem for humans who intend to thrive, not just survive in this new age. This isn't just another AI tools club. It's not a doom scrolling community. It's a psychologically safe, emotionally intelligent learning environment. And it's designed to help you stay calm, current, increase your value, and find ways to be more sustainable. So what does it look like in practice? So ultimately, there are three key pillars that are around creating this protective roof where you have sustainable living skills, food growing, practical household capacities, community self-sufficiencies. So you work in community to take care of your home, to be able to grow your own food, to recognize that in order to get anything done, you can't do it as an individual. You have this rugged individualism, this whole idea of creating these environments where some people are helpers and some people are takers, just doesn't work. But if you can find ways to work together, you can increase your capacity to get things done. And having the capacity to do more things and learn more things enables you to have the emotional space to build your AI literacy. So learning the foundations, learning about prompting, learning about workflow design, and also thinking about how can you be economically adaptable. So what new businesses can you create? What diversified income can you generate? And what new businesses, based on how the world has changed, will you be designing? So the foundation for this is emotional resilience. So this is why we believe emotional maths, and we've seen it. It's not just a belief, we've actually seen and experienced it. It's all about learning the skills for emotional regulation and self-awareness. So preparing for the future can no longer just mean getting a degree or learning to code. It requires a holistic blueprint for resilience for this future that we are living in today. So there are six transformative outcomes of the circle. Is regulating, so managing fear, stress, and overwhelm to think clearly, understanding AI, building practical literacy on how systems reshape labor and value, and building income, creating offers in an economy where single employer reliance is risky. So increasing practical resilience, learning how to grow food, self-sustaining habits, being able to raise future-ready children who can gain the confidence to know how to navigate these traditional education systems, and then learning in community, so practicing and experimenting in a shame-free environment. So where do you sit? Which side are you on? Are you a speculator or are you a person that is ready to create a grand strategy for yourself? Are you the strategist? So one side is the scrolling and numbing, avoidance and paralysis, and depending on a single employer and just focusing on traditional degrees. Or are you strategizing? Are you studying, experimenting? Are you baking the emotional maths approach into your way of navigating the world so that you're a lifelong student? And recognizing that the road to building emotional intelligence skills is hard. It's a hard ability that has to be practiced over and over again. And it starts with increasing your emotional vocabulary and literacy. And also finding yourselves in situations where you are forced to see what strengths you have around emotional regulation. And rather than criticizing your inability to regulate, becoming increasingly self-aware about where your gaps are and what compensatory strategies you can use in order to increase your ability to regulate your emotions, and also identifying which situations, environments trigger that, and where the stories are coming from that are keeping you stuck in emotional dysregulation. Thinking about income diversification and offer creations. What do you have that's of value that you can start charging for in creating automated solutions to provide value to people who don't have access to those skills, knowledge, or tools? And then new survival literacies plus AI fluency. So you need to know how to grow things. You need to know how to take care of a home, take care of yourself. All of these skills. We used to have home economic classes and textile classes. We need to reintroduce these skills of self-sufficiency. So we know that people do not fail because they lack access to tools. They fail because they lack structure, consistency, and places where they feel psychologically safe. So who comes to these circles? It's a diverse range of people. So we need all voices at the table to be able to think critically and not get trapped in bubbles where everybody thinks the same. So we have professionals, traditional professionals who are seeing that the ground is shifting, educators knowing that traditional curriculums must evolve. We've got skeptics that recognize and recognizing that criticism isn't a strategy alone, but they need to be part of the conversation to keep the conversation honest. We've got founders and freelancers, people who are building new income streams. And then we've got parents who are refusing to let their children inherit the confusion and the dysregulation and the generational trauma that many of us have internalized in our behaviors and ways of being and are informing what we have developed as a new value system. So we encourage you to join a phenomenal future circle and build the disciplines you need to survive. Don't wait until change becomes crisis, and don't wait until your industry has shifted or you realize you have no framework to answer your child's questions about tomorrow. This should be something you are equipped to meet, this future that is fast upon us and that we are actually living in, but with an old paradigm that no longer serves us. If you want more of this AI, EI knowledge, then subscribe to the Grand Strategy Consulting YouTube, and you can listen to conversations that we've been having and sessions that we've had over the last 12 months to power our new logic, our new way of thinking with the skills from emotional intelligence science and artificial intelligence learning.